Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we are back with more Greek mythology. So, we are starting into the next chapter, which says it was the two great gods of earth. So, yeah. But anyway, let's go ahead and hop into this. For the most part, the immortal gods were of little use to human beings, and often they were quite the reverse of useful. Zeus, a dangerous lover for mortal maidens and completely incalculable in the use of the terrible thunderbolt. Ares, the maker of war and a general pest. Hera, with no idea of justice when she was jealous, as she perpetually was. Athena, also a war maker, and wielding the lightning's sharp lance quite as irresponsibly as Zeus did. Aphrodite, using her power chiefly to ensnare and betray. They were a beautiful, radiant company, to be sure, and their adventures made excellent stories, but when they were not positively harmful, they were capricious and undependable, and in general, mortals got on best without them. There were two, however, who were altogether different, who were indeed mankind's best friends. Demeter, in Latin Ceres, the goddess of the corn, a daughter of Cronus and Rhea, and Dionysus, also called Bacchus, the god of wine. Demeter was the odor, as was natural. Corn was sowed long before vines were planted. The first cornfield in the beginning of settled life. The first cornfield was the beginning of settled life on earth. Vineyards came later. It was natural, too, that the divine power which brought forth the grain should be thought of as a goddess, not a god. When the business of men was hunting and fighting, the care of the fields belonged to the women, and as they plowed and scattered the seed and reaped the harvest, they felt that a woman divinity could best understand and help woman's work. They could best understand her too, who was worshipped not like other gods by the bloody sacrifices men liked, but in every humble act that made the farm fruitful. Through her, the field of grain was the farm, was through her the field of grain was hallowed, Demeter's holy grain. The threshing floor too was under her protection. Both were her temples, where at any moment she might be present. At the sacred threshing floor, when they are winnowing, she herself, Demeter, of the corn, ripe yellow hair, divides the grain and the chaff in the rush of the wind, and the heap of chaff grows white. May it be mine, the reaper prays, beside Demeter's altar to dig the great winnowing fan throughout her heaps of corn, while she stands smiling by the sheaves and poppies in her hand. Her chief festival, of course, came at the harvest time. In earlier days, it must have been a simple reaper's Thanksgiving Day, when the first loaf baked from the new grain was broken and reverently eaten with grateful prayers to the goddess from whom they had come the best and most necessary gift for human life. In later years, the humble feast grew into a mysterious worship about which we know little. The great festival in September came only every 5 years, but it lasted for 9 days. They were most sacred days when much of the ordinary business of life was suspended. Processions took place, sacrifices were held with dances and song. There was general rejoicing. All this was public knowledge and has been declared by many a writer. But the chief part of the ceremony, which took place in the precincts of the temple, has never been described. Those who beheld it were bound by a vow of silence, and they kept it so well that we know only stray bits of what was done. The great temple was at Eleusis, a little town near Athens, and the worship was called the Eleusinian Mysteries. Throughout the Greek world and the Roman too, they were held in a special veneration. Cicero, writing in the century before Christ, says, "Nothing is higher than these mysteries. They have sweetened our characters and softened our customs and have made us pass from the condition of savages to true humanity. They have not only shown us the way to live joyfully, but they have taught us how to die for a better hope. And yet, even so, holy and awesome though they were, they kept the mark of what they had sprung from. One of the few pieces of information we have about them is that the very solemn moment the worshippers were shown an ear of corn which had been reaped in silence. In some way, no one knows clearly how or when the god of the vine Dionysus came to take his place too at Eleusis side by side with Demeter. Beside Demeter, when the cymbals sound, enthroned sits Dionysus of the flowing hair. It was natural that they should be worshipped together, both divinities of the good gifts of earth, both present in the homely daily acts of life, depends on and the breaking of the bread and the drinking of the wine. The harvest was Dionysus' festival too, when the grapes were brought to the winepress. The joy god Dionysus, the pure star that shines amid the gathering of the fruit. But he was not always a joy god, nor was Demeter always a happy goddess of the summertime. Each knew pain as well as joy. In that way, too, they were closely linked together. They were both suffering gods. The other immortals were untouched by lasting grief. Dwelling in Olympus, where the wind never blows and no rain falls ever, nor the least white star of snow, they are happy all their days, feasting upon nectar and ambrosia, rejoicing in all glorious Apollo as he strikes his silver lyre, and the sweet voices of the muses answer him, while the graces dance with Hebe and Aphrodite, and a radiance shines round them all. But the two divinities of earth knew heart-rending grief. What happens to the corn plants and the luxuriant branching vines when the grain is harvested, the grapes gathered, and the black frost sets in, killing the fresh green life of the fields? That is what men asked themselves when the first stories were told to explain what was so mysterious. The changes always passing before their eyes of day and night, and the seasons and the stars in their courses. Though Demeter and Dionysus were the happy gods of the harvest, during the winter it was clear that they were altogether different. They sorrowed, and the earth was sad. The men of long ago wondered why this should be, and they told stories to explain the reason. Demeter. This story is told only in a very early poem, one of the earliest of the Homeric hymns, dating from the 8th or the beginning of the 7th century. The original has the marks of early Greek poetry, great simplicity and directness and delight in the beautiful world. Demeter had an only daughter, Persephone, the maiden of the spring. She lost her, and in her terrible grief, she withheld her gifts from the earth, which turned into a frozen desert. The green and flowering land was icebound and lifeless because Persephone had disappeared. The lord of the dark underworld, the king of multitudinous dead, carried her off when noticed by the wondrous bloom of the narcissus. She strayed too far from her companions. In his chariot drawn by coal-black steeds, he rose up through a chasm in the earth, and grasping the maiden by the wrist, set her beside him. He bore her away, weeping, down to the underworld. The high hills echoed her cry in the depths of the sea, and her mother heard it. She sped like a bird over sea and land, seeking her daughter, but no one would tell her the truth. No man nor God, nor any sure messenger from the birds. 9 days Demeter wandered, and all that time she would not taste the ambrosia or put sweet nectar to her lips. At last she came to the sun, and he told her all the story. Persephone was down in the world beneath the earth, among the shadowy dead. Then a still greater grief entered Demeter's heart. She left Olympus. She dwelt on earth, but so disguised that none knew her, and indeed the gods are not easily discerned by mortal men. In her desolate wandering, she came to Eleusis and sat by the wayside near a well. She seemed an aged woman, such as in great houses care for their children or guard the storerooms. 4 lovely maidens, sisters, coming to draw water from the well, saw her and asked her pityingly what she did there. She answered that she had fled from pirates who had meant to sell her as a slave, and that she knew no one in this strange land to go to for help. They told her that any house in the town would welcome her, but that they would like best to bring her to their own if she would wait there while they went to ask their mother. The goddess bent her head in assent, and the girls, filling their shining pitchers with water, hurried home. Their mother, Metanira, made them return at once and invite the stranger to come. And speeding back, they found the glorious goddess still sitting there, deeply veiled and covered to her slender feet by her dark robe. She followed them, and she crossed the threshold to the hall where the mother sat holding her young son. A divine radiance filled the doorway, and awe fell upon Metanira. She bade Demeter be seated, and herself offered her honey-sweet wine, but the goddess would not taste it. She asked instead for barley water, flavored with mint, the cooling draught of the reaper at the harvest time. And also the sacred cup given the worshippers of Eleusis. Thus refreshed, she took the child and held him to her fragrant bosom, and his mother's heart was glad. So Demeter nursed Demephone, the son of Metanira, and born to wise Salius, and the child grew like a young god, for daily Demeter anointed him with the ambrosia, and at night she would place him in the red heart of the fire. Her purpose was to give him immortal youth. Something, however, made the mother uneasy, so that one night she kept watch and screamed in terror when she saw the child laid in the fire. The goddess was angered. She seized the boy and cast him on the ground. She had meant to set him free from old age and from death, but that was not to be. Still, he had lain upon her knees and slept in her arms, and therefore he should have honor throughout his life. Then she showed herself, the goddess manifest. Beauty breathed about her in a lovely fragrance. Light shone from her so that the great house was filled with brightness. She was Demeter. She told the awestruck women they must build her a great temple near the town, and so win back the favor of her heart. Thus she left them, and Metanira fell speechless to the earth, and all there trembled with fear. In the morning they told Salius what had happened, and he called the people together and revealed to them the command of the goddess. They worked willingly to build her a temple, and when it was finished, Demeter came to it and sat there, apart from the gods in Olympus, alone, wasting away with longing for her daughter. That year, the most dreadful and cruel for mankind over all the earth. Nothing grew, no seed sprang up. In vain the oxen drew the plowshare through the furrows. It seemed the whole race of men would die of famine. At last Zeus saw that he must take the matter in hand. He sent the gods to Demeter, one after another, to try to turn her from her anger, but she listened to none of them. Never would she let the earth bear fruit until she had seen her daughter. Then Zeus realized that his brother must give way. He told Hermes to go down to the underworld and to bid the lord of it let his bride go back to Demeter. Hermes found the two sitting side by side, Persephone shrinking away, reluctant because she longed for her mother. At Hermes' words, she sprang up joyfully, eager to go. Her husband knew that he must obey the word of Zeus and send her up to the earth away from him, but he prayed her as she left him to have kind thought of him and not be so sorrowful that she was the wife of one who was great among the immortals. And he made her eat a pomegranate seed, knowing in his heart that if she did so, she must return to him. He got ready his golden car, and Hermes took the reins and drove the black horses straight to the temple of where Demeter was. She ran out to meet her daughter as swiftly as Minid runs down the mountainside. Persephone sprang into her arms and was held fast there. All day they talked of what had happened to them both, and Demeter grieved when she heard of the pomegranate seed, fearing that she could not keep her daughter with her. When Zeus sent another messenger to her, a great personage, none other than his revered mother, Rhea, the goddess of the oldest of the gods, swiftly she hastened down from the heights of Olympus to the barren, leafless earth, and standing at the door of the temple, she spoke to Demeter. "Come, my daughter, for Zeus, far-seeing, loud-thundering, bids you. Come once again to the halls of the gods, where you shall have honor, where you will have your desire, your daughter, to comfort your sorrow. As each year is accomplished and bitter winter is ended, for a third part only the kingdom of darkness shall hold her. For the rest you will keep her, you and the happy immortals. Peace now, give men life, which comes alone from your giving." Demeter did not refuse, poor comfort though it was, that she must lose Persephone for 4 months every year and see her young loveliness go down to the world of the dead. But she was kind, the good goddess, men always called her. She was sorry for the desolation she had brought about. She made the fields once more rich with abundant fruit, and the whole world bright with flowers and green leaves. Also she went to the princes of Eleusis, who had built her temple, and she chose one, Triptolemus, to be her ambassador to men. instructing him how to sow the corn. She taught him and Salius and the others her sacred rites, mysteries which no one may utter, for deep awe checks the tongue. Blessed is he who has seen them. This lot will be good in the world to come. Queen of fragrant Eleusis, giver of earth's good gifts, give me your grace, O Demeter. You too, Persephone, fairest, maiden all lovely, I offer song for your favor. In the stories of both goddesses, Demeter and Persephone, the idea of sorrow was foremost. Demeter, goddess of the harvest, wealth, was still more the divine sorrowing mother who saw her daughter die each year. Persephone was the radiant maiden of the spring and summertime, whose light step upon the dry brown hillside was enough to make it fresh and blooming, as Sappho writes. I heard the footfall of the flower spring. Persephone's footfall. But all the while Persephone knew how brief that beauty was. Fruits, flowers, leaves, and the fair growth of earth must end with the coming of the code and pass like herself into the power of death. After the Lord of the dark world below carried her away, she was never again the gay young creature who had played in the flowery meadow without a thought of care or trouble. She did indeed rise from the dead every spring, but she brought with her the memory of where she had come from. With all her bright beauty, there was something strange and awesome about her. She was often said to be the maiden whose name may not be spoken. The Olympians were the happy gods, the deathless gods, far removed from suffering mortals destined to die. But in their grief and at the hour of death, men could turn for compassion to the goddess who sorrowed and the goddess who died. So yeah, we'll end that piece there. But yeah, we are introduced to what are often considered the two most important gods to the everyday life of people. Demeter, who is the goddess of the corn, goddess of the harvest. You know, she provided the crops for people to subsist on. And so the harvesting and the reaping were often, and the planting of the corn and other crops, I'm sure, were given thanks to Demeter by individuals who worshipped the Greek gods. Later we have Dionysus, who was the god of wine, and of course wine is made from grapes. So they both were gods of the earth. Now we learn they're also huge to the people because they provide food and drink. Now, we do learn a little bit about the suffering they go through. We haven't hit Dionysus' story yet, but we hit Demeter's. And she feels such grief and sorrow about her daughter Persephone being spirited away by Hades himself, because Hades was so enraptured with her beauty. And so he takes her to the underworld to be with him. And Zeus, after being pestered so much and seeing the effect it was having, he was like, all right, something's got to be done. And eventually, he gets to the point where he makes his brother, Hades, let Persephone go back to the earth to see her mother. And yeah. But before she goes, Hades gives her a pomegranate seed to eat. And it would guarantee she come back to him. Knowing this was the case, and Demeter knew this is what happening too after she was told that he had Persephone eat a pomegranate seed, she grew sad because she knew she would have to go back to the underworld. And so a plan was basically hashed out. Hades would get Persephone for a third of the year, which I'm sure is the winter months, and then a little bit of spring, fall, to spend time with Persephone. And of course, this explains why everything just kind of dies in the winter and everything. And of course, when Persephone comes back, that's why she's also called the goddess of spring. Once she comes back to the earth, things start to grow again. She's the goddess of spring. Her footfalls bring the blossoming of the flowers and the abundance of fruit. But yeah. So yeah, it's one of those moments when you really think of the other gods, they don't really experience a lot of trials. They put a lot of mortals through, trials and sorrow, but they themselves don't really experience it. Once they have defeated their parents, the Titans, they're like, okay. So yeah. But it's one of the good stories of Greek mythology. It helps explain the changing of the seasons. why spring and summer are such bountiful seasons, but in the fall and into winter, things just kind of die away. But we'll go ahead and end this episode here. I appreciate y'all for watching. As always, whoop, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tries to tell you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, later.